Oh, yes. Let's not forget that. So, which actually is not. Oh, what a pain. Hi, Jody. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, not at all.
Just wanted to grab my phone. Not that I'm really going to answer it during class, but
Yeah, I understand. I'm
I
actually
see if
going to
there's
go grab
something.
something to drink. I'll be right back.
Okay, I've got my coffee, so it's all right.
All right.
So it's kind of funny. My dear friend from Israel, Bob, is back in the States, probably for a good part of the summer. But he also has Vandersteen speakers, and he was contemplating getting the ones that Ed got, and he decided, no, I'm going to keep the ones I have, which are also,
Quite
quite
impressive.
good.
Yeah.
And he just bought the subwoofer that handles
Okay.
all the low. So, I'm hoping that while he's in, I will get him and Ed together.
Oh,
They
Ed
will
would love
have
it.
a good time talking
Yeah, talking audio. Yeah.
audio. Yeah.
Ed's
And
other
also,
equipment has not come in yet. The
Hmm.
speakers, I guess, are there, but whatever else he ordered, and you have to ask him. I don't know. I guess there's a problem getting chips right now, and just so Ed's like anxiously awaiting his stuff, as you can imagine.
Oh, totally. And, I understand that a lot of companies have been having problems,
Yeah.
Both with shipping and, because of COVID, and then because of chips being behind. I mean, it's a domino effect. And
Yeah, it's across industries. So there's currently a problem with furniture. So like I ordered new furniture for my living room in March. It's not coming till September.
Oh my God.
But I know. Well, those weird storms they had in Texas affected the petrochemical plants, and apparently they make the stuff for the foam for the cushions of the furniture. so nobody could get foam. And like my parents, our project for the last few weeks has been to convince them that they need to move to assisted living, and we found a place, and now we got to furnish it, and it's hard to get furniture,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there are a lot of things.
it's that sandwich generation, I'm still
Oh,
parent kids, and I don't have to explain to you,
yeah. Well, one of Allison's closest friends is also going through it. Her parents, she's driving from DC up to Pennsylvania, where her parents are. Wait a minute. What happened to Shell? I just let him in.
Oh,
here he comes. I got scared. Shell? Yeah, okay, good.
Hello.
Right, he's just connecting to audio now. Hi there. Shell, I thought I lost you.
Hi, Shell.
Well, I'm here.
Yeah, we dropped them back off in Queens yesterday, and it took us 2.5 hours to get home. It was crazy, and we had to end up going through through Harlem, and then through the Bronx, and it was. I'm sure 4th of July traffic played into this, but I will be very happy never to drive on the Belt Parkway again.
Yeah,
2 hours. That's like driving from one city to another in Long Island.
True that. It was just, and it was raining, and the beach.
Oh yeah, yesterday the weather was terrible.
And it was like, and we had been up very early to pick them up and take them out to New Jersey, and Ed was tired. It was a very long day, but we're here.
Thank God.
yeah. Nancy had to go to a wake. One of her students died.
Yeah, that
In
was
a
terrible.
Drowning accident. I don't know if you saw that. It was in the local papers.
I didn't see, but Nancy told me about it.
Yeah.
But that's
Horrible.
So she went yesterday, and to go from her office in Newark to North Arlington, somewhere in that area, it's like 8 miles. It took her 40 minutes to go 8 miles.
so. This was a young person, or
24. He was a PhD candidate. DPT candidate, Doctor of Physical Therapy candidate. I think in his 2nd year, and he went camping with a bunch of friends in Sullivan County, New York.
Yeah,
along the Delaware, and went in a raft, and I guess a tube or something went under and never came above. And they found the body a day or 2 later. So,
which is in itself horrible.
yeah.
The waiting.
What was this?
One of Nancy's students passed away, died from a drowning accident, 24 years old. And he was a football player, a wrestler. I mean, guy was strong, but I guess he got caught in an undertow or hit his head on a rock.
perhaps hit his head and was not conscious.
Yeah, that's probably.
Oh, wait, excuse me, I got a call from Susie. Hello.
Hi, Maddie. I sent you.
I didn't get to really see. I'm gonna probably ask.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stephanie or Mindy if they can call those people, because I don't have the number.
Great. A quick question though. Am I doing Torah reading tomorrow? I am assuming that I am, but
What?
Yeah, I'll text you after.
well, I didn't get any. I don't think so. I don't think I got a final determination yet of like if everybody who's reading. It's all right when you get a chance. I'm not going anywhere. All right. Good luck. Take care. Bye. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, Susie's having problems with her computer, so hopefully she will make it.
She can use her phone.
It's true. You can use the phone. All right. Time to share the screen. Okay. So as we talked about last week, Pinchas, who is a rather remarkable character. And our parasha actually picks up the end of last week's parasha. There's a connection made, as we shall see, between Pinchas and Eliyahu Navi. First of all, let me just say that there's a lot in Parashat Pinchas. Not only the continuation of last week's story, we have all of the a continuation of Leviticus holiday calendar. All of the maftir portions come from Parashat Pinchas for the holidays, because it describes all of the different sacrificial requirements. The parasha concludes with one of my favorite sections of the Torah, which is the story of the Benot Tzlofchad, the daughters of Tzlofchad, who the man, like Tevye, had 5 daughters. And they said, why should we not inherit our fathers just because he doesn't have any sons? And God says, they're right. And of course, one of the daughters' name is Noah. So I'm really partial. So there's a lot going on in the parasha. So we're actually talking really about the character of Pinchas beyond the parasha, but we'll see. We're going to talk about the Haftarah, or what would normally be the Haftarah for Parashat Pinchas, because we are now in the period of the 3 weeks. We read the first of the special Haftarot that precede Tisha B'Av, one of the Haftarot of admonition, Tlata de Poranuta. And actually now, up until Rosh Hashanah, and to some extent through the holidays, most of the Torah portions are not necessarily, most of the Haftarot, they're not necessarily going to be connected with the Torah portions, but with the season of the year. Okay, so let's first of all turn to Parashat Pinchas. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so just let's get the context of the story. Just quickly looking over the end of the parasha. Actually, would somebody like to read here? Chapter 25. Okay, thank you, Jody.
While Israel was staying at Shittim, the people profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women, who invited the people to the sacrifices for their God. The people partook of them and worshipped that God. Thus, Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and the Lord was incensed with Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before the Lord, so that the Lord's wrath may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to Israel's officials, each of you slay those of his men who attach themselves to Baal Peor.
Okay. Pretty uncompromising position, right? Yes? Go ahead.
Just then, one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he left the assembly and, taking his spear in his hand, he followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000.
Okay, so that was the lovely story that concluded last week's Torah portion. It's kind of interesting because normally we do not want to end Aliyot on a negative note, and the whole parasha ends with the number of people who died in the plague. But just one thing to keep in mind. Again, how did Pinchas deal with this individual who was breaking the law?
He killed him
How did he kill him?
with a spear.
Yeah, with a spear, he, stabbed him. And by the way, what did God tell Moses to tell the people to do to the leaders who followed Baal Peor?
To kill them.
Yeah, but how so? Look up here,
Im-
verse 4.
Impaled them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, as much as we think that Pinchas is a very violent guy, he's actually doing exactly what the Lord commanded in a particularly, midah keneged midah, measure for measure way. But, he still is essentially fulfilling God's commandment. So now we get Pinchas's reward. Keep going, Jody. This is the beginning of our parasha.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon, the priest, has turned back my wrath from the Israelites by displaying among them his passion for me, so that I did not wipe out the Israelite people in my passion. Say, therefore, I grant him my pact of friendship. It shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of priesthood for all time, because he took impassioned action for his God, thus making expiation for the Israelites.
Okay, so he is going to be rewarded for his act. Interesting, it says, Hineni noten lo et briti shalom. They translate it as a pact of friendship. Of course, we know that shalom has a rather wide semantic reference. And it could be peace, it could be friendship, it could be welfare. But it is kind of funny after this, funny may not be the word, but after this incredibly violent response, this horrible situation and really a great deal of passion and violence, what is he gifted with? God's covenant of shalom. And we've talked in the past about how our tradition has struggled with the notion of the zealot. We'll take a look at a commentary at the or midrash at the very end. But the fact is, he has also made atonement for Bnei Israel, made expiation. So, he comes from a priestly lineage. He's Aaron's grandson. So he really already is a Kohen. But nonetheless, this sense of eternal priesthood, these are all part of his rewards.
Rabbi Popky?
Yes?
I think we could also say that this is a renewal of the original pact with Aaron. Remember,
Yes.
40 years before. So now we have to show that, Aaron is now dead.
Right.
And Elazar is taking his place, but Elazar doesn't seem to be all that active. He's there, but you just don't get the feeling that he has any real personality. It's a situation like Prince Charles and Prince William today, that, Prince Charles is the legal heir, but somehow I think the majority of people in Great Britain would prefer if Prince Charles just stepped off to the side and Prince William took over already. So Pinchas is now acting like a person who is going to be a worthy partner for Yehoshua.
Which is, of course, the role that he will fulfill.
Yeah, and he'll be around till the time of the Shoftim. They basically call him for advice at the Pilegesh Pegillah situation he's brought in there. So, and the other point I wanted to make was, if you think about it a little bit, sometimes what we would call an assassination or an execution actually does bring peace, because it removes someone from the scene who has been, let's just say, stirring up the pot. And the execution of that person brings peace to everyone else. Like, for example, when Hitler committed suicide, that was, at that point, the Germans stopped fighting on, because they had taken a personal oath to Hitler. And now that he was dead, there was no point in fighting on. It wasn't like they could have kept that going on for another month, but nobody wanted to fight anymore. In other words, the death of Hitler put an end to German resistance of any kind, because nobody felt in any way compelled to fight at this point. So
Right.
What I'm getting at is, you shouldn't assume that the fact that he offers him a Brit Shalom in some way conflicts with what Pinchas has just done. Sometimes the removal of an agitator is precisely what you need to bring peace.
Yes, absolutely. Wait one moment. I'm trying to get back. Because I couldn't open these two things at the same time. Sorry, let me just do this again. Right, let me just get out of here for a moment. Sorry, because what I want to turn now is, maybe a little bit of, well, actually, let's read just a little bit more on Pinchas. This is from Milgram's commentary. Just, we don't have to, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. A little bit, he points out that Pinchas is an Egyptian name, which also is pointed out by Abarvanel, who we'll come to in a moment. And this is the first mention of Pinchas, aside from the genealogical reference back in Exodus 6:25, of which we will return. In some respects, Pinchas's act corresponds to the Levitical role in the apostasy of the golden calf. Both had to slay each man his brother, for which both received ordination to the priesthood. And interestingly, based on the tradition in Chronicles, whence did Pinchas appear? According to the tradition of Chronicles, he was already there at the entrance of the tent of meeting in his capacity as the chief of the sanctuary guards. So, another reason why he was the one to step forward. And down here it says that he stabbed them with the spear, not a long shafted javelin, but a short shafted pike, which could be held in both hands and, like the modern bayonet, thrust downward upon a recumbent body. Since Pinchas was probably on duty as chief of the sanctuary guards, he was armed. The Midrash may disagree with him, because there's one Midrash that talks about the miracles that occurred for Pinchas, that the spear was able to penetrate both of the guilty parties, and it didn't break. He was able to lift both bodies up out of the tent, and the shaft didn't break. So, but whatever. So again, let me try and open up another text here, because again, I want to look at what would normally be the Haftarah for this week. And as Yehudi said, Pinchas lived a long time, even into the period of the judges. As we'll see, it was maybe even longer. So the Haftarah that we would normally read comes from chapter 19 of First Kings. And this is talking about Elijah the prophet. So who would like to read? Any volunteers?
I would.
Okay. Yeah, I saw you got on.
But you can't see me. I don't know why, Mitch. I'm using a different computer and it's screwy.
We're still happy to have you.
All right. When Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had put all the prophets to the sword, Jezebel sent a message to Elijah saying, "This and more may the gods do if by this time tomorrow I have not made you like one of them."
Yeah, the story behind this, of course, is Eliyahu confronts the prophets of Baal, and they're really important to Izebel, the wife of Achav, because Izebel, it basically is an idol worshiper, and these are her prophets. And in the confrontation, Eliyahu has the prophets of Baal set up their altars and do what they can and see if their God will answer with fire and consume their sacrifice. And, so they're going through all the motions, nothing is working. And Elijah, being the relaxed, reticent individual that he is, laughs at them and says, maybe you have to pray louder, maybe your gods can't hear you. And of course, nothing works. And then he has the people rebuild the altar of God and put the sacrifice on, but then they have to douse it with water. so much water that it really fills up in the little trench around the sacrifice. Nonetheless, God's fire comes down, consumes the sacrifice, and Eliyahu leads the people in the death of all of the prophets of Baal, and Izebel is, as we see, not so happy with that, and she basically says, as you did to them, I'm going to do to you. Okay, go on, Susie.
Frightened, he fled at once for his life. He came to Beersheba, which is in Judah, and left his servant there. He himself went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. Enough, he cried. Now, O Lord, take my life. I am no better than my father's.
Okay, who does he sound like here?
Sounds like Jonah.
Yeah. Jonah also, get up and go to Nineveh. Vayakom Yonah, and Jonah gets up and goes in the absolute opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jonah uses the exact same words.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Take my life. I'm done. I've had it. And by the way, we have to remember, where was Elijah located? Where is King Achav? He's the king of which kingdom? Ahab, in English. He's the king of Israel. He's up in the northern kingdom. So he's going down to Beersheba. And then he goes further a little bit into the wilderness.
Beersheba is no longer in Ahab's kingdom because Beersheba was controlled by the south.
Right.
That's exactly what he has to do. He's got a price on his head now. He's the most wanted person on the list. Eliyahu's pictures in every post office. And obviously he wants to get out of the place where he's a wanted criminal.
Yep. Okay, go on, Susie.
He lay down and fell asleep under a broom bush. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." He looked about, and there beside his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, or the journey will be too much for you." He arose and ate and drank, and with the strength from that meal, he walked 40 days and 40 nights as far as the mountain of God at Horeb. There he went into a cave, and there he spent the night.
Okay, so a couple of things here. He arose and ate and drank. With the strength of that meal, he walked 40 days and 40 nights. So first of all, we have to remember that at his first appearance, when Eliyahu confronts Achav, he's also running alongside his chariot.
Well, this is after the rain starts falling.
Oh yeah, this is after the rain. But what I'm saying, the first time we see Eliyahu is he's running alongside a chariot. Usain Bolt, Jesse Owens, eat your heart out. It's pretty remarkable. So, here, he eats and drinks and boom, he's got enough to go 40 days and 40 nights. And of course,
quite a meal.
Yeah. So also, and where does he go to?
In a cave.
Where's the cave?
The mountain of Horeb.
Yeah, which is?
The place that the Torah was given and the place Moshe Rabbeinu hid out when Hashem passed him and gave out the Shlosheh Midot.
Exactly. He's down at Sinai.
So says all the traditional Mefarshim.
Yeah. So basically, again, let's understand his physical movement. He's moving from northern Israel, obviously just gets out of northern Israel because, as Yehudi said, there's a price on his head. But then he keeps going into the wilderness and all the way down to Sinai. And then he goes into a cave. Now, so I think it's not
cave, the cave.
The cave. So I think, one thing that's kind of, El HaMe'ara, into a the cave. They don't translate it here correctly. And I think, first of all, again, like Jonah, where they talk about him going down. And even when he falls asleep, it doesn't just say he lays down. This is Vayera using the root Yud Resh Dalet, going down. So the physical movement of the prophet is very clearly reflecting his emotional state. He's going down. He's in a depression. And
the word Radam in this story, I'm missing something, Rabbi.
No, it's no. That's in the Jonah story.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah, and Jonah, you get the sense of the depression, but here too, first of all, he's suicidal. Take my life, please. And then he's going down so far south, and not only that, he goes into a cave. Now,
Okay.
Yeah, into the cave, right? So then we have really a remarkable little encounter. Keep going, Susie.
Then the word of the Lord came to him. He said to him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" He replied, "I am moved by zeal for the Lord, for God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life."
Okay, so on one hand, I am moved by zeal, which is not a great translation, because the Hebrew here in verse 10, Vayomer kano kineti ladonai. I am impassioned, yes, impassioned for God, or moved by zeal. I mean, certainly is a correct translation, just doesn't capture the Hebrew. And also we have to remember that God rewards Pinchas for using the same doubled root for being impassioned with God's passion. So, very clearly linguistic connection between the Torah portion and the Haftarah.
Absolutely.
Not hard to see why these two passages are juxtaposed. Okay.
Rabbi Popky, when you juxtapose two things that have obvious similarities, what our task is as readers is to also note what the differences are. What Pinchas is doing is approved by Hashem. What Eliyahu is doing is not only disapproved. After it's all over, Hashem tells him to resign. I've had it with you. I want someone else who's a little less of a zealous person. Mm-hmm. And so Eliyahu is forced to resign and appoint Elisha, who's a gentleman farmer and who's not a fanatic, in his stead. So, in other words, the differences are just as important as the similarities.
Yeah, although we're going to see how our tradition really plays up the similarities. So, okay, so Eliyahu gives the answer, yes, I am, impassioned. Look what has happened, but, I'm trying to do everything I can, and I've just failed. I'm done. So God is a great therapist here. Just ask a simple question. And Eliyahu gives his answer. And then God says, go on, Susie. Verse 11.
Come out, he called, and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And lo, the Lord passed by. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks. I'm lost. Oh, by the power of the Lord.
Okay, pause.
The Lord was
Pause. Now, where are we again?
At Sinai.
At Sinai. So, the Lord calls out the prophet, stand in the mountain before me, and lo, the Lord passed by. There was a great wind. Well, this is not shocking. We're at Sinai. What happened last time at Sinai?
There was lightning and thunder and...
Right, the mountain was quaking, the people were quaking.
Wait. There were two revelations in Sinai. The first one was the sound and light show. But the second one, which was after the Egel, when Moshe goes up in order to atone for what they've done, the second revelation to Moshe, in which Hashem tells him, Hashem Kerachum v'chanun
Right.
ha'rechaim, the very thing that Eliyahu is dead set against is exactly why Eliyahu is being called to this place, because basically Hashem wants to get to teach him a little bit of reason and to basically drop all his fanaticism. But it's a total failure. Eliyahu says exactly the same thing after, Hashem gives him the vision of what it was the second time around, where there was no Rash and Aish.
Yeah, well, let's get to the end of this.
Okay.
Yeah, but also we have to remember that at Sinai, you expect these dramatic results, because even Moshe, in his personal revelation, there was a bush that was burning and it wasn't consumed. So, there was fire. So normally when you come to Sinai, you can expect something big. You're right. You don't always expect something big. And that's, of course, what comes. Let's go on. Shattering rocks by the power of the Lord. Go ahead, Susie.
But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, a soft murmuring sound. Which,
as you can see in the note down there, the famous translation was a still small voice.
Yeah.
It's probably... Pardon me?
Today it's called the sound of silence from Simon and Garfunkel.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's it's probably very much trying to indicate the paradox of the power of God's voice, and yet it's not really sound. You hear but you don't hear. And again, it's a much more calm, quiet. I personally think that's one of the allusions in the Unatana Tokef prayer. You have Shofar Gadol Yitaka, which is certainly kind of the messianic vision. It comes from Yeshayahu, if I remember correctly. There's no, there's no question. It's a reference to that prophecy. On the other hand, when it says of Shofar Gadol Yitaka, the cold Mama Daka Yishama, God is powerful, but God is also in the silence. I think there's an allusion in that prayer to this as well. Of course, that's just such a magnificent line. It starts off being very loud. If you think of the sounds of the consonants, being silent quietly, and then it gets louder. Shofar gadol yitaka v'kol demama Daka Ishama, and it ends with the more with the louder consonants in between. I just happen to love. I love Unatana Tokef. So, but here is, expect all of the Sturm and Drang, and no, still small voice. Relax.
Also, the point of this is to get through to Eliyahu, that you're not always going to accomplish the goal with all the big sound effects. And a fire sometimes is what's needed, but sometimes it's exactly what's not needed.
Right.
And basically, it's very clear from the way that whole story goes that Eliyahu appears like a fire and works with fire, sometimes burns people up alive in chapter 1 of Malachim Bet, and actually he goes back in a fire. In other words, that's got its. There are needs for such people in the world, but they're also, Hashem is making it very clear that that's not the one He wants Eliyahu to do now, and Eliyahu is simply not going to listen.
Right. Although I think there's also another way of reading this, but yes, Eliyahu is just this fiery guy, and what.
It's hard to make a fanatic into a moderate.
Right. What Yodi was referring to is, of course, when Eliyahu dies, he doesn't really die. He goes up to heaven in a fiery chariot. The guy's filled with the fire all the time. And by the way, we'll get to the fact that Eliyahu kind of comes back again and again because he never dies. Okay. Go on.
When Elijah heard it, He wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice addressed him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" And he answered, "I am moved by zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and have put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life."
Yeah, so on one hand, he doesn't
That's the
totally,
thing.
yeah, before you go on, yes, doesn't really totally get it. On the other hand, I think another possible reading is that, he's asking the same question. This question and answer, which is the same, frames this appearance of God. But it could also, one other possible reading, I think in the overall context of the story, God is trying to get him to calm down because, but there's also the sense that I am moved by zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts. If you're so moved by zeal, what are you doing hiding in the cave? You got to go back to your job.
We have to basically see how this whole thing goes. And if you start in verse 9, then basically Hashem says to him, "Malach al po Elio," and he gives him an answer which Hashem is clearly not happy with. So Hashem gives him a vision to make it very clear how unhappy he is. And then he asks Elio the same question, thinking this time he's going to get a different answer. But Elio gives him the exact same answer he gave before. I mean, that's why Elio has to come to every Brit, because he said Lashon Hara about the Jewish people.
Yeah, and we'll get to that.
That's his punishment. Okay. In other words, Hashem is in no way. This is right after this that he tells him you have to resign. Okay. Starting in verse 15, he tells him you're done. We're going to start with a whole new generation.
Right. But I'm just saying another possible reading. The way I read Tanakh, I think there are very often a number of possible readings, and some readings will fit in to the larger context as it does here. And I think sometimes other readings you could take a slightly different perspective. I don't think they're mutually exclusive in the sense that there's a psychological reading and also this more theological reading.
Yeah.
And then you're right. As he continues, go back and you get there, anoint Chazazel as king of Aram, Yehu as king of Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat of Abel Meholach, to succeed you as prophet. Whoever escapes the sword of Chazael shall be slain by Yehu. Whoever escapes the sword of Yehu shall be slain by Elisha.
And then Elisha, that's his last shot.
Yeah, although he does, it is kind of, I will leave in Israel only 7,000, every knee that is not knelt to Baal and every mouth that has not kissed him. Certainly there's a punishment for everybody. There's still a sense of, not to say vengeance here, it's punishment.
Rabbi Popky, the whole religious revolution here, first led by Elio and then led by Elisha, was in to get rid of the public Baal worship in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is, Elio did not get the job done. Elisha got the job done.
Mm-hmm.
So if you learn that story as a whole story, the Elisha-Elio cycle, then it's very clear that what Hashem is saying to you is the way you're doing it, it's not going to get done. I need to get somebody who can get popular support. And I'm not going to get popular support with a guy who all ever comes out of his mouth is fire.
Yeah. Although, it's still a, fairly violent end. And in that way, it kind of connects to the story of Pinchas.
Contrast with the story.
A contrast, but also a little bit of a connection in that,
because Pinchas is encouraged to be violent. Furthermore, he goes out with the war when they basically kill all these people. He's the one who essentially now is leading the troops. He's actually the Kohen on the spot when the battle takes place. So it's very clear that right after this story, the next thing we have is Sarara Tamid
Janim, right.
So there's no ifs or buts about, in this case, Hashem is endorsing violence. He's endorsing fanaticism. In the Elio case, he is not endorsing it, and he says very clearly that that's not the way you're going to get rid of the Omri dynasty. If you want to get rid of the Omri dynasty, you're going to have to get a person to lead the effort who can mingle with the people and doesn't just become a hermit on the fringes of civilization that nobody ever gets to even see or have anything to do with.
Okay, but now let's get back again, because our tradition will see a little bit of a connection between Pinchas and Eliyahu. You know, first of all, the rabbis do put the two parshiot together.
Right.
This one story of Eliyahu, and again, because of linguistic connection, as the Haftarah, the normal Haftarah for Parashat Pinchas. Who would like to continue just looking at a couple of comments? First of all, Barbanel on the Torah portion itself.
I will.
Okay, thank you, Ricky.
And it is possible that Eliyahu the prophet was a descendant of Pinchas, because in his zealousness he was similar to him.
Okay, you know, pretty, you know, just a simple comment, but already, you know, someone is, Barbanel, I think, can look very carefully at, you know, the fact that the rabbis connected the story of Eliyahu and put it as the Haftarah, this particular story of Eliyahu, and put it as the Haftarah for Pinchas. And so too, the similarity is seen by one of the commentators on First Kings, Sion. Can you read this? Go ahead, Ricky.
I have been impassioned, yes, impassioned. I have taken revenge, yes, revenge. And similarly, in becoming impassioned with my passion.
Yeah, just drawing the linguistic connection between the two passages. Okay, now we got something a little bit different as we read a section in the Talmud and we see Rashi's commentary. Okay, go on.
Rabbi Bar Abu found Eliyahu standing in a graveyard of idolaters. He said to him, "Is not the master a priest? What is the reason that the master is standing in a cemetery?"
Yeah, I mean, now it's kind of interesting that Eliyahu is seen as a priest here. So, I mean, it's actually part of a number of halachic questions that Rabbi Bar Avu asks Eliyahu, and among them he says, "Oh, but why am I meeting you here? You know, a priest is not supposed to stand in a graveyard. And why are they?
Don't transmit tumor. I thought that's only B'nai Yisrael who do that.
Well, that's the answer that comes.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, but what's interesting is why does he connect Eliyahu with the priesthood? And here's what Rashi says. Go ahead.
Is not the master a priest? There is an opinion that Eliyahu is Pinchas. As it is written in regard to Eliyahu, I am zealous, yes, zealous, Kings 1. And similarly regarding Pinchas, in his being zealous with my zealousness. Numbers.
Yeah, or being impassioned with my passion. You know, so here, again, the same linguistic connection, but obviously it's taking a little bit further. Not only are they similar, but perhaps they're the same person. And in fact, if we take a look at Targum Yonatan, one of the Aramaic translations on the Bible, first of all, we have the text, which is just a genealogy in Shmot Vav in Exodus 6, verse 18, really, although I included a couple other verses here. Ricky, just read what the verse is, and then we'll read the translation.
These are the names of Levi's sons by their lineage, Gershon, Kohat, and Merari. The sons of Gershon.
Yeah, so they're different verses listing all the people, and then the line that is important.
The sons?
Yeah, the sons of
The sons of Kohat, Amram, Yizchar, Hebron, and Uziel, and the span of Kohath's life was 133 years.
Okay, that's the biblical text. And as we mentioned, some of the Targumim, some of the Aramaic translations actually include a great deal of midrash. And we'll see that the translation by Targum Yonatan adds a little bit more to the biblical text. Go ahead.
And the sons of Kehath, Amram and Jishar.
That's Yitzhar. It's sorry, I just copied the translation.
And Hebron and Uziel, and the years of the life.
We'll get there.
Of Kehath the saint is 133 years. He lived to see Pinchas, who is Eliyahu, the great priest, and who is to be sent to the captivity of Israel at the end of days.
Okay. That's certainly an addition to the biblical text. First of all, they call Kehath the saint. And then, a very explicit identification of Pinchas as Eliyahu. And literally, the Eliyahu will be the herald of the Mashiach. There's a pretty powerful identification. And again, not necessarily hinted at in the genealogy in the Torah.
But what is meant by sent to the captivity of Israel?
That's at the end of days, the captivity of Israel, when we're not living in our own land and we're in Galut.
What's the point of saying he lived to see Pinchas? Pinchas was born during the time that he was in Egypt. The point is just saying Pinchas is Elijah. That's the point. But I mean,
right.
There's nothing, look, there's no, what they really mean by that is the two of them have certain major league resemblances, which no one's going to deny. But at the same time, that it's very clear from the match text with Eliyahu and Pinchas that Hashem has completely different attitudes toward these two people. Pinchas is approved of, Eliyahu is not. Yonah, according to the Midrash, is the very child that Eliyahu brought to life, according to the. In other words, why did they say that? Okay, Yonah ben Amitai Eliyahu, because Yonah also talks like Eliyahu. Kachna nafshi. If I don't get my way, I'd rather get swallowed up by a whale. It's this fanatic attitude. And furthermore, here you have prophets who don't plead for the Jewish people. Instead of pleading for them, they attack them when they talk to Hashem. That's completely unacceptable. When a prophet talks to Hashem, he's supposed to say good things about the Jewish people. He can only say bad things because Hashem told them to say it to them. But once they go bad, he's supposed to plead for them, and Eliyahu refuses to do that. So, I mean, in other words, where I'm going with is, yes, there are similarities between Pinchas and Eliyahu. That's why a Midrash can say Pinchas and Eliyahu. But of course, they don't really mean that literally. They're simply trying to say there's a certain similarity between the characters of those two people, just like there is between Eliyahu and Yonah ben Amitai.
Yeah. But, I just think simply they don't believe that Pinchas lived that long. So, yeah, I mean, that's not even... Okay, but now we have yet another midrash, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which makes the connection. It's really, God kind of talking to Eliyahu, but then we see kind of an, interesting switch in there as to, who he's talking to. So, Ricky, do you want to continue?
The Blessed Holy One said to him, "Are you better than your fathers?"
Because again, that's what Eliyahu had said. I'm no better than my fathers. And and God's going to say, well, you're not better, but that's not necessarily so terrible because look what your fathers did.
Rabbi Popky, is there any way you can preserve the Hebrew so that I can see the Hebrew while you're doing the English? In other words, as they read the English, you're going to go down the Hebrew anyway. And so you can move the two of them together And that way a person can see both the Hebrew and.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't do that.
You can't, you're doing it now.
Well, yeah, but then it,
But after
You know-
you reach 5 lines, you can go down again, don't you see?
okay,
You
all
see,
right.
5 English lines are red, you now can move.
Yeah, it's, all pretty, yeah, okay. All right, go ahead.
I'm getting dizzy.
Yeah,
Esau sought to slay Jacob, as it is said, let the days of mourning for my father draw near, and then I will kill Yaakov, my brother. But he fled before him and was saved, as it is said, and Yaakov fled into the fields of Abram.
yeah, and that is the, that reference in the prophet Hosea, that becomes the haftarah for that particular parasha. Now we go on to another father. Keep going.
Pharaoh sought to slay Moses, who fled before him, and he was saved, as it is said. Pharaoh heard of this matter and sought to kill Moshe, but Moshe fled from before Pharaoh. Saul sought to slay David, who fled before him, and he was saved, as it is said, and David fled and escaped. Learn that everyone who flees is saved.
I don't know. I don't know if their point here to some extent might be discretion is the better part of valor. You can't always confront everybody. Sometimes just get the heck out of the situation. And in fact, in martial arts, they constantly emphasize, don't fight. No matter how good you are, avoid the fight. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Elijah arose and fled from the land of Israel and was saved, as it is said, and he arose and did eat and drink. There the Blessed Holy One was revealed to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? He answered him, I have been impassioned, yes, impassioned.
Yeah, again, just quoting that same verse.
The Blessed Holy One said to him, you are always impassioned. You were impassioned at Shittim on account of the immorality, because it is said, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, turned my wrath away from the children of Israel, in that he was impassioned with my passion among them.
Yeah, kind of interesting. He's talking about all these cases, and he's telling Eliyahu, you've always been a fanatic. But what's the first case he mentions? Not a case of Eliyahu himself, but Pinchas. And then,
Rabbi Popky.
Pardon me?
Since they're both in some way, and a Brit Milah, the first thing you do is.
Well, we're going to get there.
Yeah, okay. So, but if they're both there, that's clearly what Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is about.
Well, yes.
They're trying to explain how does it come to pass that Dafka or Brit Milah, Elio was present personally, and we start the Brit Milah by reading those very psukim that begin our parsha. Ben Aaron Kohen. And of course, what was Elio doing that really gets Hashem plugged? Because he keeps saying, Ki azvu b'nei Yisrael pritecha. So now you're going to see with your own eyes what a liar you are.
Right. Yeah. So, that is the actual reason they connect Eliyahu, not just with the Brit, but with covenant ceremonies. He also comes to the Pesach Seder. It's that sense that he insulted Israel. Here in this Midrash, they don't really bring that out, but that's present in many other sources.
But the question is, Robert Poppy, would you interpret Eliyahu's presence as the Seder, or let's say his presence at Havdalah on Motzei Shabbat the same way as we're interpreting it here?
No, there it's clearly, as herald of the Mashiach. Yeah.
Right. That's the messianic take on it, Malachi take on it. Okay. But not, a take on Eliyahu and Malachi, or a take on Eliyahu and the later rabbis is certainly something we should know about. But at the same time, that doesn't change in the least what the plain Pashup shot is in Sefer Malachim.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is it translated here as Phineas instead of Pinchas?
Because I just simply copied.
Phineas doesn't even sound like Pinchas.
That's the anglicization of Pinchas.
Oh, okay.
It's like
Pick up
Obadiah.
names, that's what you'll see.
Yeah, so like Obadiah. We think of it as Ovadia,
Mhm.
but it's Obadiah, in English. One of my very close friends happens to be Catholic, and we often talk about religion because he's a very serious but modern Catholic. And, we, one of the reasons that we enjoy each other's company so much is we could talk about religion seriously. And, but every once in a while, I'll talk about biblical stuff and it's like, Charlie, can you translate that for me? Because I just automatically use the Hebrew names.
Right.
And he uses the English. Okay, so here's the line, but again, not mentioning the fact that God was furious with Eliyahu, that he questioned Israel. This is just a simply, go ahead. Just finish this last part, Ricky.
I lost my place.
Here also.
Here also are you zealous. By your life, Israel shall not observe the covenant of circumcision until you see it done with your eyes.
Okay, and then they actually do, make the connection between Pinchas and Eliyahu in terms of the messianic stuff. Again, this is from Midrash Agadah. It's found in a couple of places.
Reish Lakish said, Pinchas and Eliyahu are one and the same. The Holy One of Blessing said to him, you establish peace between me and the children of Israel. So too, even in the future, you will establish peace between me and them. As it is written, behold, I am sending to you Eliyahu the prophet.
Yeah, so again, he sees this other connection.
Important part here. He's sending Eliyahu in order to make peace between fathers and children.
Mm-hmm.
The quote is leaving out the most important thing. You have to add that in to make clear what he's saying.
Right. Yeah, this is, of course, the Haftarah for Shabbat Hagadol,
Right.
This passage from Malachi, again, because of the coming holiday of Pesach. Okay, now we come to Seder Brit Milah. And I didn't put in the entire ceremony. Of course, you bring the child in and everyone says, Baruch haba, blessed is the one who comes. And then, pardon me?
What's the source that you're using here?
I just copied it from the Siddur in Davka.
In where?
In Davka Writer.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I just, and the translation I just took from Art Scroll, because I happen to have it here. So, and again, what do we say at the beginning of a circumcision? We have this text from our parasha, that the opening of our parasha mentioning Pinchas. So Pinchas is one of the imaginary guests at the Brit Milah. And then, of course, at a Brit Milah, we have a special place for Eliyahu called Kisei Eliyahu, the throne of Elijah, or Elijah's chair. And you place the child on the chair. And then, the Moel says, here, Zakisei Shel Eliyahu Hanavi Zochor Latov. This is the throne of Elijah the prophet who is remembered for good. And here now the connection is not so much with Eliyahu's fanaticism or passion, but his role as announcing the Messiah. Lishuatcha kiviti Adonai, for your salvation have I hoped, Adonai. Sibarti lishuatcha Adonai mitzvotecha asiti. I have I missed out a translation here. I have longed for your salvation, Adonai, and I have performed your commandments. Eliyahu malach habrit. Elijah, angel of the covenant, or could also just simply be messenger of the covenant. Hinei shelcha lefanecha, behold, yours is now before you. Amod al yamini v'samcheni, and stand by my right hand and support me.
The Moel talking.
Yes, the Moel talking. But
starts the actual performance of the Brit Milah.
Right.
No, he wants some chizuk because that's something that can go wrong, and if it goes wrong, it's a disaster.
Right. And of course, the primary mitzvah is upon the father to perform the circumcision. So, I think that all the more so, amod al yamini v'samcheni, please, give me support.
Right.
And then similar lines. I've longed for your salvation, Adonai. Sas anochi al imratecha. I have rejoiced over your word. Kamotzei shalal is one who finds great spoil. Shalom ra, a very famous line. Shalom rav lo ve toratecha. There's great peace for those who love your Torah. Ve'ein lamo michshol. There's no stumbling block for them. Ashrei tivchar utkarev yishkon chatzerecha. Happy is the person you choose, and you draw near to dwell in your courts. And then the congregation answers, Nispa'a betuv beitecha. May we be satisfied by the good of your house. Kadosh hechalecha, the holiness of your palace. So.
Would you care to explain why these verses are inserted here?
I mean, I really don't know. I have never really explored them. My general feeling and understanding was that, like any child could be the Messiah, and so there's a messianic element here.
No, I don't mean that part. I mean where it says Ashrei tivchar utkarev yishkon kacherecha, and then the whole kahal says Nisba'a betuv beitecha kadosh hechalecha. What does that have to do with a Brit Milah?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I don't either, but I figured you might.
No, I haven't. Yeah, as I was really writing these things down, at a Brit, I'm not always concentrating on everything that I'm listening to or reciting because
if I knew I wouldn't be bothering you, Rabbi.
No, but it's a great question. I mean, it really is a great question. And just to finish up, I think there's a little bit of humor here. Not really humor, but again, that the whole, how do you deal with the zealot? And like Bamidbar Rabbah just kind of sticks in this whole section. If I could have found it, there was a great Far Side cartoon, if you remember that cartoon series, where, it's clearly like in someone's kitchen, there's a table and coffee cups. And on one side of the table, you have these legs sticking up in the air. And on the other side of the table, there's a guy sitting there holding a smoking shotgun. And there's a woman standing in the middle with her hands on her hips. And the caption is, from now on, Earl, it's only decaf. And that's, I've used that line before. And it's almost as if, I don't know, I read this and I think like, yeah, it's like you had to try and cool down Eliyahu. So too, kind of have to cool down Pinchas. Would somebody like to read this? Pinchas, son of Elazar. Hello?
I'll read.
Okay, great, thank you.
Pinchas, son of Elazar, son of Aaron, the Kohen, said the Blessed Holy One, it is proper that he should receive his reward.
Sorry.
Therefore say, here I give him my covenant of shalom.
There, I didn't translate it literally, I just, for a reason. Is everybody okay?
Yeah, is it?
Yeah,
I'm hearing something weird.
it's background noise.
Oh,
Great
okay.
peace that he gave to Pinchas, for the world only runs according to peace, and the Torah is completely peace. Where am I? As it is said, its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all his paths are peace.
We know that.
It's
That's
fine.
yeah, we know that. D'rachecha darchei noam v'chol nativoteha shalom.
If a person comes from the road, one asks of his welfare or peace, and in the morning, one greets him with peace. In the evening, one asks after his welfare, peace.
Or peace, it's the same thing.
Shema Yisrael. It concludes with spreading peace over his people.
In the evening, the bracha over, the second bracha that follows the Shema, ends Haporesh Shalom, Sukkot Shalom, spreads the shelter of peace over his people.
The prayer concludes with peace.
The prayer, of course, is the Amidah, which, depending on where you end it, today, it ends with Hamavarech et Amo Yisrael bas shalom, who blesses his people Israel with peace. Or even if you add the traditional prayer after the Amidah, it ends with Oseh Shalom Bimromav. Go on.
The prayer concludes with peace, and the priestly blessing concludes with peace.
Yeah, Hashem Yivarech
Hashem lecha
Yivarech Hashem v'yasem lecha shalom. Yeah, now that originally was the end of the Amidah, but again, all of these central tefillot conclude with the thought of peace.
Said Rabbi Shimon ben Halafta, there is no vessel that holds blessing but peace. As it is said, Adonai will grant strength to his people. He will bless them with peace.
Yeah, so, just this emphasis here that, here Pinchas, who is the impassioned zealot, the one thing you have to be blessed with is peace. We need peace. So just a little bit on some of the, if you will, the folklore surrounding our parasha. Again, it's a very rich parasha with all kinds of other interesting things in there. But, there is this unusual connection between Pinchas and Eliyahu. And just to trace it a little bit. So I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And again, services tonight 6:30, tomorrow at 10, Havdalah at 9:30. And
Rabbi Popky.
Rochim to you. Everybody doing okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Susie, thank you for sending me the Torah reading
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
details.
Yeah. You're welcome.
All right, so
Bye-bye.
take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.